Welcome to the castle, everybody. This is Nightsaber Z42, and this is Character Vault, where I go through different RPG games and I go through the whole process of creating a character. And today, I'm going to be delving back into Cyberpunk RED, but this time, instead of doing the edge runner method of creating a character, I'll be doing the calculated method and how I went through that whole process. Now, this is a lot of the same information is, of course, repeated from the previous video when I did the edge runners. So I'm going to add a little bit of a bonus at the end of this video on doing Cyberpunk RED in Roll20. So stick around for that if you want to learn about that. So without further ado, let's delve right into the book. Alright, so here we are on page 42, which provides each of the steps into creating a calculated or complete package character in Cyberpunk RED. You can see that a lot of the stuff is the same from the Edge Runner or even the Street Rat. The only difference is you have total control over what skills you are going to be running and as well as your stats. You will have a set amount of EBs to purchase any gear, weapons, armor, fashions, and cyberware. And so I'll be going through that process in a little bit more detail as opposed to the others. So step number one, of course, is picking your role. For this character, I will be making an exec, which means we have the ability teamwork, which starts at rank 4. Now, the thing about having a rank 4 in teamwork, you actually get quite a bit of stuff. And so if we go to page 153, where the teamwork exec role ability is, you see that we actually get 3 things. We get a signing bonus, which means we actually get a business suit that our company gives us. And it probably has their logo and nice big letters or their symbol on it. We also get corporate housing. So other characters that are not execs, what happens is they actually have to pay for rent. They can live in a crummy, like a storage unit, or they can live in an upscale kind of a place. So our housing is actually kind of a little bit upscale. It's provided by the corporate, so we don't have to actually pay rent, but we do have to pay an upkeep for our lifestyle, which is at 600 EB. So that goes on the second page here under housing. So I already wrote corporate housing, our rent is free, but we do have to pay 600 EB every month, the first of every month. The book specifies that in quite detail. The next thing that we do get is a person, a team member. So starting at rank 3, teamwork gives the exec a team member. We also get another team member at ranks 5 and 9 of the teamwork ability. So this one was really interesting because we actually get to create another character. So it's like you're creating a character for the main character, and that's really cool. So the corporate team member, they actually have a class that they can get. They can either be a company bodyguard, a company covert operative, a company driver, a company netrunner, or a company technician. So I chose to create a company netrunner. And so what you would do, that specific person, that netrunner, is actually going to have a covered job. You don't just say, oh, this is my team member, he's a netrunner, he's going to hack into your stuff. They're actually in disguise, which is really cool. So for example, this specific netrunner I've named Rowan is probably going to be like an IT engineer or something along those lines. Next, we actually have to roll for his stats. We roll a d6 10 times, one for each of these stats, and that will actually determine that person's overall stats. And then they actually get skills. So they actually get away with quite a bit number of skills. They have 2 different sets of skills. A set that's at +2 and a set that's at +4. So for example, this netrunner's skill set for +2 would be athletics, brawling, concentration, conversation, evasion, first aid, human perception, language, street slang, local expert, your home, perception, and persuasion. While the +4 skills are at basic tech, cryptography, cyber tech, education, electronics/security tech, forgery, library search, handgun, and stealth. They also get cyberware and gear, which is something that's provided by the company probably. So you will actually probably want to create another character sheet for that specific person. I just kind of wrote the name of the person as well as their specific class, and then I would actually write the page number that I could reference back to. So that's a really cool thing. The lawmen also get something similar where they can call in backup, and I believe that's kind of it. I think the what is it? The medics also have something similar, but the exec is actually like you actually have a team that you create, which is really cool. I really do like that. Next up, we have the Lifepath. So starting on page 44, you have all of your options for your Lifepath. I actually took a different approach to this one. I didn't really so much as go by what was in the book. Sometimes I decided to kind of think outside the box. So things like the cultural origin is still going to be North American, and our language that we would have learned would be English. The personality is a little bit different. I chose picky, fussy, and prim and proper, which I don't think really is kind of an option here. Picky and fussy is, but I decided to go with the prim and proper because we're an exec, and I thought that really kind of fit. Our clothing style will be business wear, of course. I mean, we are an exec, we have an image to maintain, so there is that. And our hairstyle is going to be neat and short. By the way, we're also playing as another female, which I have not yet to name, so there's that. What do we value the most? I actually did roll on this one, and I think this was the only one. No, I've actually rolled on two of these. I rolled and got vengeance. So that was really interesting because when I rolled that, I started really thinking about who is this character and why are they an exec and stuff like that. And so the thing that I came up with for backstory reasons, this is a person that comes from a corporate background. Their family or their parents were a couple of corporate researchers who were betrayed, and that this character is actually on a quest for vengeance, basically, to get back at the person. And that person happens to be their boss. So the people that we're working for are the people that we're trying to get revenge for, which I thought would be really interesting. A little different take on the exec role. So, people are tools. I actually did roll on that one. And I thought that was really interesting that we got vengeance and that people are tools. So we are really going out of our way to get what we want, to get vengeance, and we don't care who is getting hurt. So I think that's a really interesting take on our character. And those were the two things that I rolled off the beginning that led me down this path of figuring out why we are an exec and who are we getting to vengeance on, and who betrayed our family. So we value ourselves the most. I did choose that. Or no, I actually rolled on that one too. We valued ourselves. I did roll a 5 on that one. And our most valued possession is a recording from a lover, and I did roll on that one as well. No, actually, I did not roll on that one because I had something special in mind. So we actually have a recording from a previous fling, and that actually comes into our backstory as well. That person, our lover, actually ended up betraying us as well, personally, from a rival. Our background, our parents are, of course, corporate. Instead of corporate technicians, I went with corporate researchers, but it's pretty much the same thing. Our environment, we came from a once upscale neighborhood. So if you looked at the map of Cyberpunk or of Night City in 2045, the center of the city is basically like a wasteland, so to speak. So I figured that we would have come somewhere from towards the center. Not in the center itself, because a mini nuke went off, which basically if you were there, you were dead. So we were not in that blast radius per se, but we would have been pretty close. Our family would have lived pretty close. Our family crisis, of course, as I explained, they were betrayed. big boss man of this corporation betrayed our parents, and yeah, that wasn't very good. So our life goal is to hunt those responsible and make them sorry. So there's that. We do have a friend, and we also have a tragic love affair. So the person that I chose to be our friend, and I actually chose this one, was our teacher mentor. So after the betrayal, we would have been out on the streets as a street urchin, basically trying to get by, and we would have come across this specific mentor figure that taught us everything that we know, and thus our quest for vengeance has begun. Our tragic love affair, and this one was an interesting one. Well, obviously it's going to be an ex-lover, but the rival basically cut us out of the equation. And so I thought that our love affair from years ago sided with our boss. So our boss actually doesn't know who we are quite yet, because we would have had maybe some changes to our face or something like that, maybe even our gender or anything like that. And they actually don't know who we are just yet. So that's also another thing that kind of comes into play in our background, that we're going to have to worry about appeasing our boss, but at the same time covering our tracks for our vengeance. And I think that double-edged sword is actually really cool, and the admin can do some pretty cool things with that. So I thought that was really cool when I actually thought about it, and so I went ahead and wrote it down. So that's kind of pretty much all there was for the life path. Then, of course, you have your role-based life path stuff, which for the exec begins on page 63, which I really hate that, you flip a page and there's the other side. I really just would have preferred if it was like on one spread, to be honest. But our corporation is actually cybertech and medical tech research or based. We specifically work in HR, human resources. So we're pretty good at talking to people, which you're going to see reflected in our stats and our skill set. So there was that. This core, though, they're pretty ruthless. They're very much profit centered, which obviously explains why Big Boss Man betrayed our parents and stuff like that. And the base for a corporation is set statewide, so in the state of California, basically. Who's gunning for us? Or who's gunning for the corporation, rather? The law enforcement is. And specifically, they are watching us as well. So I thought that would have been another really interesting thing, that we have to watch out for Big Boss Man and the law people, the law enforcement, because they're gunning for our corporation. Which, I mean, that is also kind of something that I really thought hard and long about, because at the same time, why wouldn't we just let the lawmen just go for us? But I think, all in all, I think the lawmen are looking at us. So maybe the Big Boss Man is trying to backstab us somehow. Maybe they actually do know. Maybe they don't know. So that would be up to the admin for sure. And our boss, I did write and say that they don't realize who we are, but of course, I think that would be up to the admin's discretion if they at least have a hint or something like that. And of course, our ex-lover would be somewhere towards the top, whether as part of the corporation or behind the scenes or something like that. So there's all sorts of different things that we can take with that. So that's all the stuff that I chose for the life path. I was quite happy with some of the roles, and I really had a lot of fun thinking about connecting things together and doing stuff like that. So next up will be our stats and skills, and I have a different approach for this one. So let's head that way. So this is where I took a very different approach to how I did the Edge Runner. With the Edge Runner, you have tables that you roll for, or you are given a set number of skills that you allocate points to. With the calculated package, or the complete package, We don't get that luxury. We actually have the freedom to choose anything that we want. Of course, we're still going to have those core abilities that we need to spec at least 2 points in, and on your character sheet, those are going to be in bold. So you need at least 2 levels in those specific skills. So the way that I did this, the book says you should start with stats first. I actually started with skills first because I didn't know what my overall stats needed to be in order to reflect my skill set. So I worked backwards on this one. So what I did, I wrote all of the core skills that every character would have, and I started with 2 points in those. And then I actually borrowed some skills from the Edge Runner table. I didn't take all of them. I took just the ones that would kind of make sense, that would make it seem like my character is an exec, like accounting, bureaucracy, and business. And then I took some special flavored ones, like lip reading would be one that I really was interested in. I also took handgun, forgery, evasion. Well, actually, evasion is a core skill. And English, we get 4 free points in. But the one thing that I really thought about was, how would my character go about taking out the boss if that came to it? And so I decided to give 6 points into martial arts. Now, the thing is, martial arts is a ×2 skill. So my 6 points actually takes up 12 of my 86 points that I have allocated. Now, no skill can be above 6, and none can be under 2, or at least for the core rules. So after I figured out that 2 for my 12 skills would equate to 24, I subtracted that, and I got 62 skills to allocate total. I then went over and gave myself, I think, 2 points in everything else, and came up with a total of everything else that I needed, which turned out to be 40. And then I just kind of looked at it and said, what would she really be good at? I gave those numbers a 6. Then I had a second tier of skills that she would be kind of good at. Those got 4. And then anything else would be just at 2. So things like accounting, which, a person in HR would be expected to have, that was lower on the tier list. So while she is an exec, that's not her main focus, her main goal. Her main goal is vengeance. So I definitely kind of went with some things that would get her there. So then after I did that, I went on to my stats. And so what I did, I wrote down all of my stats, and then I ranked them from the number of points in that stat that I have allocated to skills. So for example, I have 29 points in skills that relate to intelligence, 5 that relate to reflex, 21 that relate to dexterity, and so on and so on. Obviously, luck, move, body, and empathy, or actually empathy will have them, but luck, move, and body will not have any of those skills because there are no actual skills that relate to those stats. So I ranked them in order. And since I could not have a stat of more than 8, I gave my 8 to intelligence, which was my highest stat, or which was my highest skill set. And then I went down the list. So my second place winner would be dexterity, and I went to a 7. And so I went in a descending order, doing 8, 7, 6, 5, and then I believe I have some that are at 4. So my tech is at 4, my cool's at 5. Will is actually the lowest, so that one has a 3. And then for the other 3 skills that are not, or the other 3 stats that do not have skills allocated to them, I started those off at 7, I believe, except for body. Now I put them at 5, and then I said, okay, what could I bump up that would make sense? And then I went ahead and gave myself +1s to certain stats. And I came out with 8 intelligence, 5 reflex, 7 dexterity, 4 tech, 5 cool, 3 will, 7 luck, 7 move, 5 body, and 6 empathy. So that's how I approached my skills and my stats. It was a really interesting way of doing it. And I would highly recommend possibly doing that if you don't have an idea of what you're doing with your character. I would definitely work backwards, because I think the most important thing are your skills, and then your stats are kind of secondary, because you need to know what you're good at and then make sure that your stats reflect that, if that makes any sense. So that's why I approached it that way. I went backwards. So next up would be our gear. When you are using the calculated method, you actually get 2,500 or 2,550 EB to spend on gear, weapons, and armor. You actually get 800 EB for fashion wear, but as an exec, some of those fashion choices are a little bit expensive if you're going into the business wear or even the high-end fashion. So what I did, I went ahead and bought my weapons and my armor first, because I really wanted this character to rely on their martial arts skills set. So I went ahead and took just a heavy handgun, a heavy pistol, which does 3 to 6 damage, holds 8 ammo, but it has a rate of fire of 2, and you can actually conceal it, which is really good. And then, of course, I have body armor, which is Kevlar, which gives 7 stopping power. I'll probably also, at some point, get some head armor as well, because we don't want to get headshot and then just totally owned. So there was that. And for the gear, I thought about things that would make sense. So having an agent would definitely be one of those things. A little carry-all or a backpack or a purse would also make some sense. But also things like infiltration. Since we are an exec and we're trying to get vengeance, I went ahead and bought a lockpick set. And of course, since we are needing to keep up with appearance, I also went with a personal care package, or a personal care pack. That way we can always look pretty. For the fashion wear, we do get 800 EB to spend on stuff like that. So in addition to the standard business wear things that we start off with from our exec ability, I went ahead and bought some leisure wear, some urban wear, and then I spent the rest of my money on some contacts that are business-like. Which kind of is a little weird, but oh well. It was my choice and my choice alone. The glasses were too expensive, so. But yeah, the high fashion is definitely where it's all at. And even the business wear is a little bit outside of my current price range. Everything is either expensive or luxury priced. So there was that. So after I went ahead and spent my 800 EB on the fashion wear, I then went back and purchased the gear. And then I took a real hard, long look at cyberware. All right. So cyberware is where I always have the most fun at. And then I started really thinking about, well, what kind of cyberware should she have if she is a vengeance-going type of person? The obvious choice would have been to include some more fashion wear, because she's an exec and personal appearance is kind of everything. But I did that with my Nomad, and I kind of wanted to stray away from that. I wanted something a little bit different, something a little bit more subtle. So I went ahead and replaced both eyes with cyber eyes. They both have image enhancements and low light infrared and UV vision. So the thing about these cyber eyes, each cyber eye has 3 option slots. Okay, some, like the low light, take 2 option slots. The image enhance is only 1. And the problem that I started finding when I started messing with these cyber eyes, a lot of these options you do need 2 cyber eyes. So that means I'm spending 200 EB for both cyber eyes, and then I'm spending 1000 EB for the image enhance, and 1000 for the low light infrared UV. So luckily it all kind of worked out. I think I was just a little bit under the EB cap, so I actually came out on top with that. And some of the other things that I really kind of looked at, some things like a micro video, which would be something that your cyber eye can record. and store those videos. I thought that would have been really cool. And so we started with 6 empathy, right? So that means our humanity was at 60. Now, during character creation, when you take cyberware, there's a set number of humanity loss. You don't actually roll the dice to determine how much you lose. So my 2 cyber eyes took away 14 humanity. The image enhancements took 6, so that's already at 20. And then my low light infrared UV, those took another 6. So I'm already missing 26 humanity, which means my empathy has gone down to, I believe, 3 or 4? I can't remember. So be careful when you are definitely adding cyberware, because you're going to lose a lot of humanity pretty quick. That's all I can say. And at the beginning of the game, you might not really want that. So there is another option for getting more money, which I haven't actually explained. And that's actually basically selling your soul to whoever that you work for. I didn't take that mainly because we already work for a corporate. But something interesting probably could have been like, maybe we secretly work for another corp and that they are sending us inside of this corporation to get back at our boss. I mean, there's all sorts of fun things that we could really do with that. One thing that I do want to mention before I turn it over to the Roll20 side of things. So your stats, you have a level and then you have a stat. So when you're adding when you need to make a roll using a skill, you take into account what level that you have in that skill, as well as the stat related to that skill. And you add those 2 numbers and you get your base. And then you roll your d10 and you add your base to that, and that's your actual score for that round or for that skill test. So you either beat the DV, which some of those DVs are pretty high up there. I can't remember what the cap is for impossible, but there is that to consider. So just something that I probably should have pointed out in the last video that I did not. So with all of this said and done, why don't we head over to Roll20 and I'll show you 2 different character sheets that I have found that could work for your game. So the first Cyberpunk RED character sheet that I'm going to show you in Roll20 is simply labeled Cyberpunk RED by Raichelson. And so when you actually open this up, it's actually going to look exactly like the character sheet from the book that I've been showing you, or the printed copy rather. And that's a good thing and it's a bad thing, mainly because, the printed copy is in landscape form. So when you actually open up the character sheet, there's a lot of scrolling, both horizontally and vertically. But of course, if you go ahead and click on the top left, that'll open it up as a new window and you can expand it to however it would fit, however you would like it, or even just put it as its own page somewhere in Chrome or wherever you happen to be using this. So since it's just exactly like the printed character sheet, this should look all very familiar. There are some boxes that you get to add, for example, the weapons. I can just click add and it'll add that in there. Modifying, you can go ahead and delete anything that you don't want. Something that is quite useful, especially for character creation, is the stat points remaining and the skill points remaining. Those are actually quite useful because I done goofed when I was doing my physical copy. I actually had 5 stat points left over. I didn't use the full 62. I only used 57, and so I went ahead and allocated that into like 2 points into ref, and then I think the rest into will or something like that. Or no, I put some into empathy. That way my humanity could get bumped up a little bit, especially after that big cyberware drawback that I had. But everything else is exactly like you would have it on your physical character sheet. So the skills will be on the first page, and so you have your level. Something that's a little bit different, however, is the second column. It's not specifically for your stats like it is in the physical copy. This is miscellaneous, which I actually really do like, especially in a virtual tabletop, because it should automatically calculate what your stat is and allocate that towards your total. So for example, my lip reading skill right here, we have that at level 5, but because I have a cyberware for my eyes, it gives me a +2. I can add that here under miscellaneous, and then it's automatically going to calculate the 8 different points for intelligence and add that to my total. So when I click on lip reading, it'll actually go ahead and roll everything for me. So it's 2 plus 5 plus 8 plus 1d10. So my 2 plus 5 plus 8 would make it 15. And then I rolled a 7 on my d10, which you can see there. So I really do like that. I like that it just makes it a lot easier, especially when you have to worry about things like your cyberware. So that's really cool. I do like that. There's your life path and inventory. I totally forgot to put my gear in, but everything else is quite the same from the character sheet, although for the friends and tragic love affairs, it doesn't have the 3 bubbles. It just has 1 text box, which I'm fine with. You have everything else though. You can keep adding in gear and all of that stuff. Cyberware is exactly like third page. You click on whatever it is you want, and then you basically just type it in. You will have to type in what effect it has. So like for the image enhancement, I would have to add +2 to those 3 skills that I got the bonus for and stuff like that. And so something that wasn't included on the physical character sheet is net running. So when you have programs and stuff like that, you can actually go ahead and create those and then roll them here. And then of course you have your roll initiative. And then you also have a button for settings, so you can reset your base skills and stuff like that. So I actually really do like this character sheet, even though if it is a bit crowded. And that's one of the main problems that I have with the Cyberpunk RED character sheet overall, is that it's a little bit too text heavy and the text is kind of small for my eyes. So there's that. The second Cyberpunk RED character sheet in Roll20 that I'm going to show you is Cyberpunk RED Tabbed by Michael Raichelson. So this one, it's quite similar to the previous character sheet that I showed you, although it's not going to look like the physical copy. Everything is still there. It's just going to look different. And its main gimmick is that it has these tabs, so it's no longer going to be set in a landscape mode. It's just you're going to have to be switching it between these tabs. I like that little bit of an organizational thing because it makes it so it's not so text heavy. I know where things are. And there's also a lot of nifty features in here as well. So I can actually choose my role, which is really cool because when you actually choose your role, you get the role ability right here, and you can set that to whatever level you have. I don't know if you can actually multi-class though. It doesn't look like I can add another role, so there is that. But something that is pretty nifty, because when we have our teamwork at level 3, I believe, we get a team member. I can actually add team members to my roster. Likewise, the other role abilities will have something specific to that. So like the nomads, you can add vehicles and stuff. Although I believe you can add vehicles under gear as well. Something that I would definitely advise you to keep on is the show dice rollers. That way you can just roll a straight up D10 or even some D6s or even a percentile dice at the ready without having to open up the dice roller here. So you have your skills, and since everything's in portrait mode, everything is kind of in a different order. By the way, I didn't know that. I guess I never really thought about it, but conceal/reveal objects is actually in its alphabetical order here, and in the physical sheet it's not. So that's something interesting. Something that I really wish they would have had is a miscellaneous modifier. So I can show my modifiers here, but these don't correlate to any of the skills. These are just generic. For example, my Cyber Eyes, for lip reading, perception, and conceal reveal object, I actually have to take into account and add that to my level that I have here. This skill sheet right here does automatically take into account the stats. So when I click on reveal object, it's going to be the 4 plus the 8. As you can see here, 4 plus 8, and then of course I rolled an 8, so we have a 16. When I first used this character sheet, I was having some weird glitches in the actual dice rolling. For some reason, it rolled as a 0 and it didn't add anything. Like my D10 was actually a 0 or something like that, and it only added these two numbers. So I don't know if that was just like Roll20 being goofy, or if that was actually something here. I don't seem to have that problem anymore, and I think I deleted the actual game where that took place, so I can't really reference back to it. Maybe it was all just a dream. But I digress. All you have to do is click on the skill and it'll go ahead and roll it. I do wish that there was some way to modify it, but for the actual skills that have other tabs on it, you can add those in and set the skills that you have. Combat's where you're going to find your things like initiative, what your evasion is, and you can add weapons as well as your armor and ammo. Something that really kind of confuses me is it says show martial arts attacks, but I can't actually click on it. Unless, here we go. I didn't even bother adding this. So if we have Taekwondo, and that's supposed to be at 6. I thought I added this in, actually. So there we go. So now I have it. There we go. Now I can roll that, and bada beam, bada boom. So yeah, this is something that I was talking about before. It rolled a 0. I don't understand what exactly that's supposed to mean, because 6 plus 6 plus 7 is going to be 19. I don't understand what is going on here. And it seems like I'm rolling... I should probably put in a hit modifier, right? Or no, that probably won't do anything. Well, now it's actually rolling, so... there we go. Something that's also different between this character sheet and the previous... this one will actually automatically roll your critical successes and your critical failures. So for example, I rolled a critical failure up here. It says subtract 4 because I rolled a 1 on my D10. And this time I rolled a 10 on my D10. So I get to add another D10, which happened to be a 10. So I'm adding 10. So this is actually a 35, whereas this would be a 12. So that's something that I actually really do appreciate in this character sheet. The other one, it doesn't do that. That's actually wrong. It does do that, but I remember thinking that it wasn't as clear cut as this one. So then you have your gear, your cyberware, which isn't as fancy as the physical character sheet. You just click add under all of this, and then you have to, of course, write in the effects for that specific cyberware. Honestly, like having the picture of the skeleton, but I also like having this big text box for the data. I can add everything I need right there. And then of course you have your Lifepath, which I really didn't add a whole lot to because it's nothing that I can roll on. So there's that. So these are the two character sheets that I would recommend using. There are 2 more, but they're both for the Jumpstart Cyberpunk RED game, which I don't think you should use because there's a lot of key features missing in that box set that you don't get in the core rulebook. So there is that. So which one would I actually use? That's actually a really tough question because I like both for different reasons. Like if you took the organizational layout of the tabbed version and kind of added in key features like the miscellaneous modifiers for skills, the nice little skeleton picture with bigger text boxes, I think that would be like the perfect character sheet. So I would actually really have to play around with it. And so I'm also really not quite sold on the tabbed dice rolling. Yeah, so I'd have to play around with that and see like which one is better or how it works rather. So that is going to be it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Feel free to leave a comment down below. Check the description for this character sheet if you would like to include it as an NPC for your game or just as a character in your game. Also, give this video a huge thumbs up to support this series and subscribe if you would like to see more. I will see you guys in the next video.